Hey everyone, Nick here and welcome back to GamerTube, and welcome back to our Little Nightmares character concept series. So for today's character, we'll be looking into the Scarecrow. Now the Scarecrow is the community character that won in our community character livestream. So we'll be going through this character's location, their gameplay mechanics, and all that good stuff as well. And as always, I will just state that these are just a couple of our own ideas. We don't really expect Bandai Namco or Tarsier Studios to really do anything with these ideas or turn them into a game or a DLC. These are just some cool stories that we get to tell, and we hope you enjoy. And lastly, before we start today's video, if you could please consider leaving a like and commenting, as it does help out a lot and it is greatly appreciated. Also, do be sure to subscribe to GamerTube so you don't miss out on any of our future uploads. Alrighty, well, let's get into our Little Nightmares community character, the Scarecrow. So our story takes place in a vast cornfield somewhere far from the Pale City. Our protagonist wanders through the cornfields looking for a safe place they can stay. They've been wandering for days, surviving however they can. On their travels, they haven't seen anyone in this remote place. They've been surviving mainly on corn, but the produce in this area doesn't look very appetizing. Something seems very wrong with the plants that grow in this area. As they wander through the tall stalks of corn, they can hear the crows cawing in the distance. As they finally find an exit out of the corn stalks, they come across a frightening figure. They wince in fear and then suddenly realise this individual is nothing more than a harmless scarecrow. This sinister looking scarecrow wore an old hat, worn rags, and seemed to be stuffed with hay. Their limbs appeared to be made from bundled up branches that almost looked like hands. Their head was made from a hessian sack that had two eyes and a frightening mouth cut out. But this scarecrow didn't seem to be doing its job correctly. Although it was meant to scare off these flying critters, the crows perched on top of them like they weren't scared at all. The child stares at this strange scarecrow a little while longer and then went on their way. As they continue on through the cornfield, they can see an old farmhouse in the distance. They decide to go investigate the house and see if anybody is home. As they approach the front steps of the old farmhouse, they see that the door is locked shut. The child walks around to the other side of the house to see if there's any other way inside. As they walk around, they notice a broken window and decide to climb up and enter through the gap in the broken glass. In order to get up to this window, the player would have to drag multiple items over to climb up and reach it. Once they've made their way up, they go through the broken window and find themselves in the living room. It looks like no one has lived here for quite some time. All the old furniture looks untouched and covered in dust. The child wanders over to the kitchen to see if there's anything they can eat. It's been a day or two since they've eaten anything and their stomach is starting to hurt. Even though they've been surrounded by edible crops the whole time, the further they travelled into this specific farmland, the food looked more and more inedible. Whether it be rotting pumpkin patches or the disturbing looking corn that's growing all around the farm, the child couldn't eat any of it. While searching in the kitchen, the child comes across a locked pantry. The child assumes behind this pantry door must be some edible food. So in this gameplay segment, the player would have to search the farmhouse and find the key to the locked pantry. They search room after room, but there isn't any sign of the key. After searching all the rooms, they decide to look down in the basement. This is where they finally find the key. But the key is locked inside a strange looking machine. It appears that whoever was using this machine was forced to do so. They could see chains and shackles on the ground and a large barrel of corn near the machine. It seems like the key will be released when the task is done and the forced worker could free themselves and then go get something to eat. In this puzzle segment, the player would have to grab multiple cobs of corn and feed them into the machine. Every corn cob that got ground up released the key a little bit more at a time. The player would have to keep up the pace and figure out how to get multiple cobs in the grinder at one time. If the player is too slow at feeding the machine, the hatch for the key will slowly start to close again. Once the player has completed the task, the key is released and they can make their way back to the kitchen. They unlock the cabinet door and find a delicious looking jar of peaches, honey, and some bread that still looked good enough to eat. After they finish their well-deserved meal, they notice that it's started to rain and the sun is starting to set. Since this house looks safe enough and well abandoned, they decide to go to one of the bedrooms and sleep for the night in one of the beds. As they slept soundly, they were totally unaware of what was waiting for them outside. The child suddenly wakes up as they hear the front door creak open. They quickly climb out of bed and peer around the corner to investigate. And to their shock and horror, they see the Scarecrow walk through the front door. The Scarecrow closes the door and locks it as they search for the child who has wandered into this farm uninvited. The child hides behind the couch and watches the disturbing looking Scarecrow search for them. They notice the back door of the house is unlocked. In this gameplay segment, the player would have to sneak past the Scarecrow in order to make it to the back door. Even though it was raining, the Scarecrow could still hear the player's footsteps. Just quickly running out would end up in the player being captured or even eaten by the Scarecrow. The player would have to wait for the sound of thunder to quickly make their way to the next obstacle. The sound of the loud thunder gives the player the brief moment to make their way to the back door. Once they've taken their time to sneak past the Scarecrow, they finally make it to the back door. The Scarecrow chases the child out the door and through the back farmland. They can see a large barn at the back of the property. The child eventually makes it to the old barn where they can hopefully find a place to hide. As they run through, they locate a ladder and climb up to the second level of the hay-covered barn. The Scarecrow wanders inside and looks for the little intruder. They see hanging on the wall a bunch of farm tools, including an old-looking scythe. The Scarecrow grabs the scythe and sets out to catch the player. The child on the second level can hear the Scarecrow underneath them. The child decides to make a break for it and run over the top of them and try to get some distance between them. Then, all of a sudden, the sharp, deadly scythe blade pierces through the hay, almost hitting the child. In this gameplay segment, the player would have to make a break for it and run for the entry of the barn. They'd have to be careful not to get fatally injured by the stabbing scythe blade. As they make their way through the hay dodging the scythe, they eventually leap off the second level and run out the barn door. The child makes their way back into the cornfield in hopes of finding a neighbouring farm. Maybe someone could help them. As they run through the cornfields, the persistent Scarecrow chases close behind them. They slash the child blindly through the stalks of corn. Once again, the child must dodge the deadly blade that's being slashed at them. As they finally find an exit out of the cornfield, they come across a neighbouring farmhouse. But there's nothing left of it, it's been destroyed. It seems that someone has smashed a tractor straight through the house, reducing it to a pile of rubble. They look back and see the Scarecrow still searching for them. They approach the destroyed house to get a better look. When they get closer, they can see that something or someone was once underneath this tractor. As they dig through the rubble, they can see what looks to be a hatch for an old storm shelter. This would be perfect. They could hide out here and hopefully lose this deranged Scarecrow. As they clear all the rubble to get into the hatch, the Scarecrow once again notices them. Just at the last minute, as the Scarecrow approaches them ready to strike, the child quickly opens the hatch and goes down. They lock the doors and step back as the scythe blade pierces through the hatch door. The child shields themselves in fear as their fate was soon to be sealed. Any moment now, the Scarecrow would break through the hatch doors and it would all be over. The child waits impatiently for the end of their story to come, when eventually they heard nothing. Not a sound. They could see beams of bright light piercing through the door. They wait for a while and then eventually open the hatch. As they exit the hatch, they can see the early morning sun has risen. To their surprise, they see the Scarecrow just standing there motionless. They've dropped their scythe and now they're just standing there in place. The child hesitates but eventually approaches the still Scarecrow. They kick the side of their boot, but still, nothing happens. It seems the child is safe for now as long as the sun is up. They walk past the Scarecrow and continue their journey back into the cornfields, in hopes of finding a safe place to survive another day.
Alright everyone, that's all we have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing, as it helps out a lot and it's greatly appreciated. Also, do be sure to comment down below what you thought of today's character and what you'd like to see going forward. And lastly, before we end today's video, just a very big thank you to all the community members that voted on this character and got engaged with the live stream. And also an even bigger thank you to the other members of GamerTube, Jordan and Jade, who lend a lot of support and help these videos come together. Alrighty, well, until the next video, I'll catch you later, bye.